Welcome, everyone. Thank you for braving it out in the snow, although there's no snow yet. Thank you for coming regardless. I know we're supposed to get a little bit of a storm. Well, welcome. My name is Liz Malone. I'm the program manager at the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. We are excited to host a panel of all-star entrepreneurs and leaders in startups and politics. I know some of them from former just relationships, and I got to meet some of them just today, so I'm really excited we could bring them all together and have an awesome conversation with you all. A special thank you to our co-sponsor, the Lady Project. Are there any members in the room right now? Could you raise your hands and wave? Any Lady Project members? No, maybe the snow deterred them as well. As tradition, we always ask, for who of you is this your first Nelson Center event? Raise your hand. Awesome. Welcome. Visit our website at entrepreneurship.brown.edu, and you can scroll down and sign up for our newsletter and get instant updates about all sorts of events happening through the Nelson Center. Awesome. So our panelists today are creating communities, thriving businesses, and fighting to change policies through their roles as founders, leaders, and as public servants. We will learn more about their journeys, their ups and downs, and discuss issues that women of color continue to face in startups and in politics. We want you to leave here with new perspectives, but most importantly, empowered to launch your own ideas or run for office. And here are a few data points that I did a little research this past week because I wanted to bring to your attention to give a little more context to this event. In 2016, a report entitled Project Diane revealed that fewer than a dozen black women had raised more than $1 million in venture capital. The study also found that 0.2% of all VC funding was allocated towards startups founded by black women. A lot has changed in the past 2 years. Funds collectively raised by black women founders increased from $50 million in 2016 to nearly $250 million in 2017. The number of startups founded by black women has also increased 2.5 times in the past 2 years. And as you can see, early November, there was lots of change happened in the November elections. There has been a historical rise in women of color running for office at all levels of government. 400 women of color ran for office just in 2018. 117 women in total were elected to office in November. 42 of them were women of color. And that's just a snippet of data. I could go on and on and on of women of color taking on leadership roles after 2016. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Lynn Hernandez, Director of Brown University's Inclusion Programs in the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity. She's also an Assistant Professor of Research in Behavioral and Social Sciences in the School of Public Health. You've all received handouts of the bios of today's speakers, so take some time if you haven't already to read through to prepare for the Q&A session that's going to happen around 5 o'clock. Now let's get this started, and I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about today. Thank you, guys.
So before I begin, I just also want to say thank you to Liz Malone and Abby Rubin for putting this together and organizing the phone calls and the agenda. So thank you to them for just kind of organizing this event tonight and also putting this fantastic, amazing panel of women. I have had a chance to talk to all of them, and I'm just really excited about what's going to be shared out tonight and the questions that we're going to get. So thank you all. So you all have their bios, but I just want to briefly say very quickly who is part of our panel tonight, and then give them the opportunity to take about 2 minutes to just introduce themselves as well and say a little bit about themselves and the work that they've been doing. So to my left, I have a colleague and friend, Nerva Fortune, who's Providence City Council member and Assistant Director for Presidential Scholars Programs and Diversity Initiatives here at Brown. Then we have Amanda Johnson, co-founder and chief operating officer of Mented Cosmetics, a digitally native beauty brand targeting women of color. To her left, we have Carrie Hodges, Brown class of 2001, and founder of Women Rank, a platform for college women to speak openly and honestly about sexism, harassment, and assault on their college campuses. And then to her left, we have Rika. And I forgot to just make sure that I would pronounce your name correctly, so please correct me if I don't say it right, but Rika Elise or Elsie?
Like Elise, like
Elise.
Elise.
Thank you. So Rika Elise, founder and chief executive officer and Beauty Link and co-founder of #@the-table, a new initiative focused on bringing together female founders from different industries to build community strength and resources. So please help me thank and also welcome our wonderful panel members. So I would love to just have each of you introduce yourself briefly, who you are, as well as the work that you're doing. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and start, or if Rika wants to start.
Rika. Thanks. I've been volunteered. Hi, everybody. My name is Magister Rika Alize. I go by Rika for short, just in case anybody's curious. I am the founder and CEO of BeautyLink. We're a tech-enabled platform that connects beauty professionals and customers for on-location appointments. So hair, makeup, soon skin, kind of scared about that. But we have 16,000 professionals in 30 cities throughout the United States right now, so it's really exciting. I founded the company 3 years ago because my family member is physically disabled and didn't have the power to put in a ponytail. And taking that one issue of being able to put in a ponytail and transforming it into technology has been really interesting and scary as a solo founder and one with no technical experience. So feel free to ask me questions around that.
Oh, am I next? I didn't realize that we volunteered and we're going. Hi, my name is Kari Hodges. I'm super excited to be back on campus / super overwhelmed to be back on campus. For all the Brunonians in the audience, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you have any questions about anything, any comments about intersectional feminism or being a woman of color, or if you want to go to grad school, or if you want to go to grad school at MIT, or any of those things. I'm the founder of Women Rank. We're an app for women on college campuses to anonymously report sexism, harassment, and assault. Our objective is to keep an independent form of accountability on all universities and to inform women of the situations on their campus. In addition to an app, we also have in-person community events, and we're currently in beta test on several universities on the East Coast as well as on the West Coast. And then we're going to go into full launch in 2019. So you can ask me about the best places to cry alone as a founder. You can ask me about beta. You can ask me about agile development. Any of those things, feel free to talk to me about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Johnson. I'm the co-founder and COO of Minted Cosmetics. Minted, short for pigmented, is premium beauty for women of color. We launched January last year, and it's really been a rocket ship of 2 years. We launched with an initial 6-shade capsule collection because we wanted to solve the everyday beauty problems of women of color, and we felt like they were being left out of traditional industry. Since then, we've launched into 5 other beauty categories, and we'll continue to launch new products. We're really excited for what 2019 holds as we grow our team, as we grow our product collection, and as we enter and think about retail. So feel free to ask me any questions about physical product companies. Raising capital, we've raised at this point over $4 million. Business school, my co-founder and I both went to Harvard Business School 2014. And anything else about running a company?
I don't know anything about running a company. My name is Nir Villafortune. I'm an elected official. I'm a city councilwoman, and I represent Ward 3 in Providence, Rhode Island. But for me, I think all city council people represent the city of Providence because the broader decisions that we make are for the whole city and not our individual wards. I'm also the Assistant Director of Scholars Program and Diversity Initiatives here at Brown University. I work with some of our students who have the highest financial need, as well as our historically underrepresented minority students, in developing programming, creating pipelines to success, and also introducing these individuals to research during their time as an undergraduate student. Outside of Brown, in my city council capacity, I feel like sometimes I'm working on putting out fires, but it's okay. Some of the major issues that have been percolating are around affordable housing, which is an issue throughout the country. Most of our cities, our urban cities, as well as our states, have a stock issue. In fact, tonight we have a big, there's going to be a very controversial and an important vote that's going to take place. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how that has a direct impact on housing and the cost of living in our city. Some other issues that I work on is around education. I'm the co-chair of the Education Committee. And looking at issues, our city's fiscal capacity right now with issues around, our pension and other things that have been impacting our city finances. So you can ask me questions about balancing it all. You can ask me questions about higher education, city politics. I'm fairly new to this. I actually won my first election last year. There was a special election because the former councilperson was recalled, which opened up the door for me to run. And I'm also the first Haitian American to be elected in the state of Rhode Island.
Thank you. And I just want to apologize because I totally mispronounced your last name too. So I'm sorry. It's okay. So, okay. I'm going to ask Rika the first question if I can, just because you gave us permission to ask you a question on being a non-tech person in a tech world.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, how is BeautyLink transforming the beauty industry with technology? And again, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is like to be a non-tech person in a technological kind of industry?
I think it's really interesting to not have a tech background and have to speak to developers every day. I've developed a new management style that is all around music, based off that. So, for example, if I'm getting bad news, they have to send me a song that would replicate how bad it is. And if I'm getting good news, they also have to send me something that's that's positive. But the reason why I did that was really to give myself that space of maybe 10 to 15 minutes to process a song, 10 to 15 minutes for them to evaluate how important this problem was. And then that way I get 20 to 30 minutes to be like, okay, so we have a fire. Right? So I use that because I'm a non-technical founder. I really needed to be able to figure out how to manage a team that I didn't really speak to every day in terms of the way that they speak, right? Another thing that I thought was really interesting was that I did not go out and find my technical co-founder, as everybody would tell me to go do. You need a CTO. The CTO is going to make your business the best. And I was like, screw this. I'm going to build my own WordPress site, built it, tested it, took a piece of paper, started asking people, how would you book an appointment? And then had all the problems set after a year and went to go and get my first developer. My first developer joined my team because he also had someone in his family who was disabled. So that ended up resonating with him, and then we ended up getting another person who felt like the beauty industry wasn't inclusive enough, and they joined, and then we're in year 3. We have 6 developers on our team, and we have playlists every day. So I'm really excited about that. But all of us pretty much congruently came together deciding that what we wanted to do was make beauty accessible and not necessarily look at it from the standpoint that the only place you can ever have your solace or your beauty was going to be inside of a salon. Because there are some people who the salon is not actually designed for. So what could we do in order to change that problem and use technology to do that? And BeautyLink's really fostered the booking challenge, automation, and now we're looking at customization because not every woman wants the same thing. And to tell you and dictate to you what a blowout needs to look like is kind of challenging, so we don't want to do that. So we're starting to look deeper into what the customization looks like, and I'm super happy that my tech team sends me Tina Turner to Rihanna every day, because then I figure out what the issue is.
Thank you. So continuing with this theme of technology, Carrie, I have the next question for you, and I just wanted to ask you, particularly behind the motivation, or your motivation behind Women Ranks, but also ask you how you see technology really changing the face of, or not changing the face, but impacting or helping us address a lot of the gender inequities that exist on college campuses. I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a little bit. So technology fixes everything, except it doesn't. So, so a lot of the motivation, I think what's interesting for me when I talk about a tech-enabled platform that connects femme-identifying students to each other, I really consider myself as an activist entrepreneur, where what we're really trying to do is use traditional mediums that have created a lot of impact, that have created a lot of connectivity to address social problems. And I think that that's one of the areas that technology hasn't necessarily been used for, but can. And I think what's interesting is for us, we started with in-person interviews, in-person events, and then moved to a technology platform, because one of the things that happened for survivors was this narrative, especially through going through the disciplinary process on campus, was a constant narrative of being told that they were the only one. The thing that they had experienced had just happened to them, and that the institutional knowledge around that event or around that person or around that crime died when that student was silenced or when that student graduated. But inherently, with systems that involve sexism, they are systems. And we've seen with the Me Too movement just what technology can do. It can make things visible. It can make the actions that organizations or individual people take next accountable. And it can also push institutions to take actions that they wouldn't necessarily. Institutions are businesses, and because of that, I always talk about this as if the cost-benefit analysis is that it's much cheaper to silence one student than it is to change a culture. And so for us, it's really trying to shift the dynamic of power with that. And we started with campuses really because although we think of education as something that we're receiving, it's something that we're purchasing. And so because of that, we as consumers have power. If 1 in 4 purchasers of a car were harmed or endured physical violence at the hands of that car would be recalled. So the question is why, if this is the second most expensive purchase that most women and femme-identifying students make in their life, why is there not that same accountability or recall? Collectively, women make up the majority of students. So if we shift our purchasing power based and make decisions based on our safety, we can change this institution, and that's why it's an interesting space to do this work, because there is an accountability here, because we're consumers. So that was the idea behind it. So then the second part was how do I think tech can change it? We've seen a lot about creating external structures of accountability, and I think in institutions that have been built inherently to protect their own bureaucracy, which is inherently what makes an institution. It has to have policies in place that protect it, so that way it can't fall from any one person, right? It's important that we move and shift accountability out of organizations holding themselves accountable. There has to be transparency and there has to be knowledge, and just because one student is silenced does not mean that that information or that problem goes away. So what's great is the connectivity can organize action, it can create external accountability structures, and it can also let survivors know that they're not the only ones and that there are other options and possibility for them, and to access resources that maybe their individual university doesn't have, but that are out there in general.
Thank you. So Amanda, could you share a little bit about how you and your co-founder went about testing your product and kind of validating a need for it in the community?
Yeah. First, before I dive into that, I wanted to say thank you to the team for not only having me on this panel, but letting me do office hours earlier. It's a great resource for anybody in the audience. I was just thinking that to this very idea of like thinking through your idea and finding different ways to test it. I met 3 amazing students today with really cool ideas, and we were able to talk through different ways to think about it and test it in the market. So anyway, a resource that you all can use here at the center. And when I would have should have taken more advantage of undergrad, honestly. But anyway, great resource. But how did we do it? So my co-founder and I met in business school, and so we knew we wanted to work together, but we didn't quite have the idea yet. So we both moved back to New York from Boston, and we would meet periodically to talk through ideas. I think there's this fallacy that we all walk around with, hoodies, and then ideas just pop into our head, and like that's how you become a founder. That's not most people's story. We actively pursued ideas, and so we would go back and forth and send each other articles and meet up. There was always wine because that gets obviously the mind flowing, and we would talk about things that inspired us, and there were a lot of ideas that came out of it. Some that we knew we could do but didn't have the passion. Some we had the passion but had no idea how to do. And then we had this conversation one night about life hacks and all the life hacks we were doing in various areas. And I said something to her like, I've been looking for the perfect nude lipstick for like 3 years. And she was like, like that moment, what? I hate all makeup. Like nothing works for me. And that's when we knew we had something. We were two Black women from different backgrounds, basically same education, lots of disposable income, but there was this billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar over industry that we felt like we couldn't participate in. And it's like, how is that so? And so that was the light bulb moment that said, go after beauty, pursue it, and how would you guys do it differently? And so one of the things that we also had in common is that we were two corporate women at the time. I was at Barney's working in digital business development, like omni-channel stuff, apps, websites, and she was at Deloitte doing retail consulting. And so we needed something to wear in a professional setting with the confines that come with that, which we were totally comfortable with. It wasn't like we were rebelling, but we didn't feel like there was everyday beauty truly accessible for women of color. And so that's the idea. That was the lane that we were going down in beauty. And we did all the foot traffic, all the work to go to the big box beauty stores, the department stores, even your local Duane Reade, and buy a ton of nude products to figure out what worked for us. And so we realized none of it worked. And we didn't like any of it, and we talked to our friends and family, and we surveyed, and we focus grouped, and all the things you do to really test that initial concept. We did that work and found common themes, common problems amongst women of color. So whether you were Black or South Asian or Middle Eastern or Hispanic or some combination of any and of all of those things, you had enough melanin where you had a problem and you couldn't find yourself in beauty. We heard common themes of different product types that weren't working for them, different trends in beauty they felt like they couldn't participate in, how the retail store turned them off, how influencers are really who helped educate them. So we kind of took all that together and said, okay, we think we have this business idea here. Minted, short for pigmented, is really going to focus on everyday beauty. And what we're going to do that no other beauty brand does is we are going to prioritize women of color. There is something there, must be, in the formulation where these billion-dollar businesses have not figured out how to make a nude lipstick for the everyday woman of color. So we went to manufacturers. None of them knew what we were talking about because we said we wanted to make a nude lipstick, and they were like, here are all our pinks on the shelf. And we were like, yes, and you don't get it. Our lips are brown and pink and purple and two-toned and beautiful. So why am I shoving this kind of round peg in a square hole kind of thing, right? So it didn't make sense. And we said, we're going to have to do this from scratch. So we went on YouTube. There's a lot to learn there, including how to make lipstick. And then we went to Google and bought all the products that you need to make a lipstick. Literally, it's all online, the mold, the everything. And in our Harlem apartments, over a year and a half, we made samples until we perfected that initial 6-shade collection. And then we sent those samples out to our friends. That was kind of the first test. And I thank God every day for our friends who trusted us with their faces. And they would come to our apartments on a Saturday, and we would test out the shades. I'm like, oh no, we need something darker here, something lighter there. Or we need to remix a brown with a purple undertone and a brown with a pink undertone. And what we realized, and the focus groups and the friends validated this hypothesis, is that there is no universal anything. And women of color need a range. There is no one pink that's going to suit us all, nor is there one brown. We are a range of hues, and that needs to be respected as well as our undertones. And so we launched with this 6-shade collection. The other validation point outside of the friends and other resource I think you guys should test and think about is who are the experts in your industry? And for us, that was influencers. So those samples we were making on Saturday, we literally sent it to every influencer on Instagram that would give us their home address with a handwritten note and a simple ask of like, just try it and give us feedback. Not make a video, not make a review, do all these things. No, just try it and let us know. And they loved it and they started making content. And I remember one day we were at work and our Instagram just started blowing up. We went from like 2 people to a couple thousand in a day. And we're like, what happened? Because this one influencer that we sent it to who had a couple 100,000 followers loved it and put her sample on this model where she was doing her makeup, and all of a sudden people were like, what is this product? I want it. And so it really were these early experts that signed off and gave us the validation that we were doing something different and we were doing something that customers wanted. And then we were able to take that validation to investors and manufacturers and really solidify the business.
You all are giving me so many more questions that I want to ask. But I'm gonna, you're next. So I have a question again, then I'm going to go back to the questions that I have jotted down here. But Nerva, as Liz mentioned earlier, November 6th was really a historical moment for women women of color in politics. As the Providence City Councilwoman in Ward 3, what are your biggest challenges, basically, that you're having to navigate on a daily basis? What are your priorities? How do you determine what your priorities are going to be? And if you want to tackle this third question, where do you see yourself going? What are your next steps? A lot of questions.
That last question. So I'll tackle the second one first. Okay. What are my priorities? So I think my priorities are driven by what my community needs are, and the needs that I assess. So I'm from Providence. I came to the United States when I was 3, and I grew up on the South Side, Washington Park neighborhood of the city. Although I was elected on the East Side, which is starkly different from the community that I grew up in. And in fact, I grew up in the community that I grew up in has 2 zip codes. There's 02907 and there's 02905. And there was a report that came out, and I was speaking to another friend who's a public health policy expert, and we were talking about how your zip code can determine your outcome. So my zip code, my outcome now does not align with my zip code. In fact, I had lead poison as a kid. I was exposed to lead, and the level of lead in my body was so high that I would have to get treatment on a biweekly basis and have like an IV in my arm. And I still remember the building where the hospital was at before we had our children's hospital was St. Joseph's. But you think about how the lack of access and equity and how it impacts communities of color. And so a lot of my priorities are not only driven by my community, not just the community that elected me, but the broader community in Providence, but also personal experiences. I'm an immigrant. I grew up in a working class family, poor working class family. I went through our public school systems. Now, from kindergarten to 3rd grade, I did go to parochial school, but it was mainly because I was undocumented. And my parents, I didn't have a social security number, and there was the fear of being deported. And I actually did not receive my permanent status until the age of 15. So I lived in a shadow, which I didn't even know I was living like behind these shadows until I was an adult. But we're looking at our communities now where we're seeing more immigrants, and we're seeing a very diverse group of people participating in the political arena. But there's still a lack of access. We're not teaching civics in our schools anymore. So students don't even understand the impact of participating in the election process or participating in government. And a lot of people think that they don't have a voice. I've heard people say things like, well, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. But it does matter, because we saw that there was a percentage of people who did not vote, and that same percentage that did not vote is what caused, I don't know what your politics are, but this person who's now the president of the United States to win his election. And so my priorities, which I listed earlier, include creating more equitable systems for marginalized groups. When you think about a city like Providence and many urban communities, they're very segregated. So you have Providence, South Side, every side but the east side is very different. And I was looking at the census data, and it showed that about 85% of our city's population lives on the east side. The east side actually has the highest socioeconomic bracket. The average income for our city is about, between $31,000 and $37,000 per year. So for people to afford to live in the city, to rent a home in the city, they have to make about $51,000 per year to afford to even rent in the city. And so what our families are making or what our households are making does not even align with what it costs to rent or to live here. And so we have to create systems where we're not only educating our kids to prepare them for the workforce, but we're also educating them to go off to college and to stay in college. You think about some of the initiatives towards our community colleges, which the governor has invested funds where the first 2 years are free. But how many students are actually staying in these programs? And if the first 2 years are free, how many of those courses are courses that don't necessarily contribute to a major? So it won't actually help them graduate on time. So instead of staying in the community college for 2 years, they're there for 3 or 4 because they're making up credits. And so part of my job is to work with my colleagues to look at issues around education, around housing, around job development in a more comprehensive manner, and to look at it from a long-term perspective, because a lot of times initiatives are created because it's a political gain, or you're trying to create things for the next election so you can say, well, this is what I did. But we don't necessarily think about the long-term impact. So I'll use an example. So there's this proposal right now in City Council. People are gonna vote, I'm gonna vote no, for this luxury development that's supposed to be built. So this is a $300 million development, and it's luxury housing. We don't even have a market for luxury housing. But there are some people who see it as a way to generate tax revenue into the city. But what they're not looking at is that this development also qualifies for a tax stabilization agreement, which actually is a tax incentive. So the first few years, they're only paying the base tax, which I think for that parcel is about $11,000 or something like that. And every year after that, there's a ramp up until you reach full taxation. This would be 20 years from now. And if the project is completed early, the city actually loses money. So when you think about it, it's not just a 20-year investment. It's actually like closer to like a 50-year investment or something like that. By the time we see those tax revenues, the full tax revenue, I won't even be around, I don't think. And so sometimes we don't think about the long-term impacts of our decisions and the ordinances that we create. And even looking at our education system, we have not invested in our ELL learners, and they're not getting enough support. Majority of our teachers do not reflect our student demographic. So over 90% of our students are students of color. Majority of our students are Spanish speaking. Over 85% of our teachers in our public schools are white, and they don't live in the city. And so not only do the students don't have models, people that they could look up to, but we also have teachers who may not be culturally competent and understand how to engage with students who have various needs. We're also not investing in social emotional support, which the school district has created an initiative to do more around that area, where we're seeing an influx of school violence and shootings. And so we really need to take a more comprehensive approach. And also, when we look at these issues, we have to look at them from a perspective that they all are interconnected. Education impacts housing. Education impacts job attainment. Education impacts the city's economy. Because if you don't have people who are ready to go into the workforce, or people who are educated who can pursue certain careers, those are people who cannot contribute back to our city. Those are individuals who will not be able to purchase homes. And home ownership is a significant asset. Those are individuals who won't be able to afford to rent in our city. So they can't contribute or even start a business because they don't have the financial capital, they don't have the resources, they don't have the education to do it. And so those are like some of my priorities. All right, the first question was, I'm a bit loquacious too, sorry.
I'm so like interested in what you're saying right now. So the first question was, I can remember. What your biggest challenges are?
Navigating, and I have a couple of challenges. Balance. I have to learn to say no. I think there's a lot that's happening, and sometimes you try to tackle many things at the same time. And I'm one person with children as well. So it's trying to establish a balance. And also there are things that I really care about and I want to participate in, but then something else is calling you. And so you have to go to this meeting, or in one day you might have 4 meetings that you have to get to. So by the end of the night, you've actually went to work when I could run, when I didn't have a boot on my leg. But I'll wake up at 5:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, go for a quick run to start my day, and then your day starts. And so by the end of the day, you've got your exercise in if you had time, send your children off to school, go to work full time, go to like 4 meetings, answer emails, and then you crash at like 1:30 in the morning. So it's not sustainable. So I think a balance is needed because your overall wellness is really important, particularly in any of the industries, whether it's politics or it's entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of times for women, particularly women of color, we understand the various challenges. And so we want to always try to be one step ahead to try to mitigate like issues or be proactive. Another thing is, I think it's very difficult as a woman to run for office or be elected, but I think it's even more challenging when you're a woman of color, when you're an immigrant, and when you're also representing a community that doesn't necessarily look like you. When I ran for office, there were a couple of questions that came up. I remember someone calling me, and the first thing that they asked was, are you legal now? A person, and I've shared this in the past, or a person calling to ask me, where did I graduate from college? Or where do I work? And there are a lot of times where people don't even realize that they're doing it, but you'll be in a meeting and you'll be the only person of color, and you're the one who's facilitating the meeting, or you're the one who developed this initiative, but then they refer to like someone else for questions. And you're like, hey, I'm in this room, and I'm kind of the one who brought everyone together, so hello. Or they'll go to someone else for something, and you're like, I'm kind of the one who's like grad school education policy right here. So it's making a presence. And for me, I'm very direct. And hopefully some colleagues appreciate it, some don't. But you always will know where I stand. But I think it's really challenging because there's a fine line of being very direct and being the angry Black woman. And you'll see things where it's posted in the media, like there was a resolution that I put I put forth last year, and it basically called out the police officers, and I was like the attacks on social media, and people telling me that I need to go back to where I came from, or posting pictures of a gorilla or a monkey. Someone sending me a private message asking me if I had cameras in my home. So you're already competing in this male-dominated world as a woman, but you're also competing as a woman of color. So it's almost as if you have to prove that you belong here constantly, because you will never really be accepted. And so I find myself doing extra work to be prepared for meetings, doing additional research, or creating certain connections that I wouldn't necessarily develop. And there are many other challenges, but I think those are the ones that I struggle with on a daily basis. And in terms of where do I see myself next, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
So thank you for sharing that. And actually, so one theme that I kind of heard from all four responses, and Amanda, you mentioned this, is having to talk to, having to work with, having to engage in conversation with people who just don't get it. And Rika, you mentioned, having to talk to people about beauty salons, how they weren't accessible to everybody. And that's actually something that I hear a lot from students. If they're going to propose a thesis or a research idea or what they want to do, having to get the support and engagement of people who just don't get it. And so whoever wants to answer this question, or if many of you want to answer this question, how do you navigate that? How do you engage them?
I have a high level of tact. I've learned how to navigate this space where I can say to someone like, hey, you had a wonderful idea. Thank you so much for your feedback. Or before I was, can I swear in here? Okay. Before I would just say, fuck off and like, leave me alone. And the fun part about being in beauty especially is that whenever I have to go and start considering investors and, what does that look like? What does that room look like? I'm kind of ballsy a little bit. It can turn people off, and I'm totally fine by that. But I used to work in prostate cancer prior to going into beauty. So for anybody that asks me what a blowout is, what type of services we offer, explain what a service looks like, if I could learn about your balls, pretty sure you can learn about beauty.
I'm going to use that everywhere. I'm going to just use it everywhere for all different types of things.
But learning how to navigate the space and definitely being able to combat a lot of the imposter syndrome you may feel. You might not feel like you can do it or should be doing it or should be saying it, but learning how to develop tact is going to be one of your biggest weapons, allowing you to be able to walk away with a powerful stance, and definitely being able to combat any type of imposter syndrome you may have independently.
Yeah, I would say, and I think this is just exploited depending on what type of relationship you're attempting to enter, but the reality is people do business with people they know. And that know means a lot of things in different contexts, right? But take in fundraising or with manufacturers, people are willing to give a chance to people who look like them, right? Because there's this commonality. Oh, you went to prep school? I went to prep school. You were a lacrosse player? I was a lacrosse player. And instantly these two white men get each other. And I get it. If a black woman were to come up to me and be like, oh, where'd you get your twist out? I'd be like, oh, girl, here. And I get it. So fundamentally, I get how people invest in people they know and how that's been exploited in business, right? How that is so exaggerated in funding. Black women receive less than 1% of all VC funding, or how that's overexploited in manufacturing, where it's really difficult for people of color to get manufacturing contracts, right? I think we as a society have taken that notion and for lots of reasons I think we all know. We're running with it a little too far. But at the end of the day, I think, I hear you, I wasn't that way, but like, I get it. My partner and I
couldn't help it. You know, the thing is that when you're with your partner, there's two of you. And
well,
then
depending on the
and then
scenario.
when I'm going in as like that independent. You got to either love me or hate me because I'm by myself. I'm not with anybody else.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is I think there are different tacks to take. And I think the one that we attempted to or implement it, depending on the partner, how we would do it, is really try and find the common ground, right? And so, and I think, again, there's different approaches to this, but our approach was, if, say, our first manufacturer, our first lipstick manufacturer, they are a Middle Eastern family that owned this makeup manufacturing company in New Jersey, and we knew that. And so the approach we went in was like, we know you can understand the problem. Your family is melanated. You are Middle Eastern. You understand what it means to be othered. Like, let's find the common ground here and then build from there. And they gave us the best price and the best minimums to start with, because he was like, well, you remind me of my daughter. Great. Because now I have a better contract because I remind you of your daughter. Or our very first investor was actually a white woman. And the reason she got the idea is because she had been getting hair extensions for forever. And she knew, and she used to live in San Francisco, and she knew what it meant to travel across the bridge and go into Oakland and go into this place far away to find the hair extensions that matched her hair. And like, so in terms of beauty and feeling othered, even as a white woman, she understood what it meant to go to great lengths to fulfill your beauty needs. So it's not like just because the person across from you is so different, you need to be so, maybe this person you're not, right? Like, that's not necessarily my personality. My personality is to find the common ground. And every time we could, with every partner, those relationships have been deepened. Those people take even more of a chance on us. Those people have given us even better deals. That first investor wrote a check at the Starbucks. Like, she was like, I'm in, I get it. And so I just think there are lots of different ways to combat the otherness and refine your approach about what room you're in, because I think the reality too, the world is so small, and the reality is you're probably going to come across these people again, and it's better to leave a good taste in their mouth, if you will, so you can come back to the well, right? Because there'll be reasons you need to ask for something again and again and again.
I want to actually jump in on this question. I really appreciate what both these founders had to say. I think two things. There's a founder, I forget her last name, but her name is Rachel, and she's a founder of an organization called Wethos, which connects design professionals. I love Rachel. She connects design professionals to meaningful work. So they're doing design for nonprofits because design matters for nonprofits. And she talked about when she first got funding how, you know, she made a list of 250 VCs or something like that, and at the end, only 2 returned her call, and she realized that it was okay because all the rest of those people were not her people. And I think that that's the other thing, is like, people who don't see you, because this is a relationship, having investors, and so you want people who really get you as well. As much as you're asking for something, you're giving something meaningful. And you have to really understand your own value around that and what you actually are bringing to the table, and that it has actual value. So you're not begging, right? You have something meaningful, and that person has to see that in you. The other thing is that at the end of the day, business is business, so know your numbers. Like, really, that is the common language. That is the universal language of everything. So when people come to me and are like, you're a social entrepreneur, what is this? Like, who cares? I said, oh, well, 81% of women have experienced sexual harassment and also make 80% of all purchasing decisions in the United States. So when you tell me that this isn't actually a population, I'm so confused how you could leave 80% of all purchasing decisions on the table, right? And that's how we do it. And that way I don't get into deep conversations about, does sexual assault really exist? Is this meaningful? It's conversations about money, and it's conversations about power. And at the end, I don't care if and it's conversations about power. And that's what I'm actually talking about. And so in that way, like, know what your currency is, and then just in that language, know exactly who you are. Did that make sense?
Yes. I just wanted to add, fake it till you make it. There are a lot of times when you're like, especially for me, and I don't know about everyone else, but you're in spaces where you're not quite comfortable, and I've developed, like, I guess, this persona where I have my information, but there are times where people might do things to intimidate you, and you might be a bit nervous. But you have to kind of, in a way, put it on your game face and to let them know that, like, I'm not for that. And there are many times where I do put on that game face. I have this thing where I cross my arms and cross my legs and just say, I'm listening, kind of thing. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, I hope I'm not giving it away. I hope they don't know. Like, this is kind of making me nervous, but I got to keep that, keep a certain stance. But I think it is important to have, like, a balance because you do need to fundraise, you need to develop fiscal capital. And in terms of politics, when you compare people who run from office from under-resourced communities and you see how much money they're able to raise in comparison to someone who might run for office in a community where there's more affluence, it's a significant difference. There's a major gap. When I ran for office, I actually raised more money than all my opponents combined, but that was a problem. I remember reading a Providence Journal article where someone stated that there was, some sort of like PAC fund or PAC group that contributed to my campaign. And I was like, well, maybe they think it's Emily's List. That would be awesome. But there's all these assumptions that are made about individuals, particularly if you don't come from a political background. And someone had mentioned something about when people invest in people that they know. When you think about some of our very successful politicians, it's like it's in the bloodline. Their grandparents were a politician, their uncles, their aunts, their friends, their mentors. So part of the process is building your network. And I actually tell my students, whether it's in politics, whether it's in education, whether it's in business, entrepreneurship, you have to build your network. And it's important that people understand where you stand, they understand your background, and even when you disagree, to have tact and to do it in a respectful and professional manner, because you never know when you're going to need that resource in the future. And so it's one, not burning any bridges, because it is a small world, and in politics, it's even smaller. And also creating lines of communication, even when it's with people you don't necessarily agree with. Now, there are definitely people I've tried to talk to, and we are just not on the same page, and I'm done. And even after the 2016 election, I remember there were friends who were like, oh my goodness, there are certain people I'm no longer talking to. And I discovered that there were people I know who didn't align with my political views. But I also made a personal commitment that I'm going to speak to everyone, even if we're not on the same page, because I think it's really important to understand what those needs are. Because although I look different from you, I think that there are certain key issues that are important to all of us. And if we are on the same page on those key issues, there's an opportunity for us to have some sort of discourse so we can understand where the gaps exist and how we can fill them. And regardless of what background you come from or your background in general, I think it's important to have many people at the table. And unfortunately, the political world, the business world hasn't always been inclusive. It's really important for us to create that pathway. And while we're creating that pathway, it's also important for us to create opportunities for other people. So some of the things that I'm navigating, I hope that the person after me does not have to navigate. I think about a city like Providence or a state like Rhode Island. to be the first Haitian American to be elected to office is kind of sad, considering that we have such a significant Haitian population in our city. We have such a significant Haitian population or immigrant population in our state. So there needs to be more diversity. Luckily, in our city council, we do have a pretty it's pretty diverse. We have four women of color, on city council, and it's a Democratic council. And for the first time, we're going to have a majority of women, but unfortunately, I don't think we're all on the same page on certain issues. But it's just really important to create these networks and also to expand the networks to make sure that other people get involved. And there was a question about technology, but you didn't ask me about technology. And I just wanted to add how to engage, but technology is a great resource to engage young people. And I think right now, it's even more important to get our younger generation involved in the political movement, because our kids in high school, my son's gonna be voting in a few years. The next election, my son will be old enough to register to vote. So I think you have to use technology to engage young people and to use it as a tool for them to understand civics, civic capacity, and also a way to highlight some of the work that's being done by people of color, so the community can see that there are people who are doing some wonderful work. And it is possible to run for office. It is possible to start your own business. It is possible to raise money, but we have to create those networks and not only create opportunities for ourselves, but to use the resources and also create opportunities for other people.
I have so many questions to ask, but I also want to give the opportunity to the audience to ask some questions. And so I think just kind of given the time, I'm going to just ask them when I'm talking to them privately, and just kind of see if anybody in the audience has any questions that they want to ask in particular to any of our panelists. And
we get through a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like the rapid fire. So.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry. Of course not. I'm the special one. I'm very excited to be here and to hear all your stories. My name is Melissa Husband. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State here in Rhode Island. And as the Deputy Secretary, one of the areas that are under me is business services. And I oversee trademarks and service marks as one of the divisions within Secretary of State's office. And my question is, what types of intellectual property protections do you have in place as business owners? I know on a national level, the percentage of Black women who have businesses that actually protect their businesses is very small. And in the state of Rhode Island, it's actually non-existent. So I'm just curious, as you have started and now grown and have been extremely successful in your individual businesses, what types of protections do you have in place? And for those folks in the audience who are looking to start businesses, what kind of advice could you give to them around protecting their intellectual property?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Go ahead.
You can start. Okay. So at least for Beauty Link, the name Beauty Link is really intentional, right? Like I wanted L-I-N-K, I couldn't get it. Had to go after the Y, and we purposely went after every single trademark we could go after for the space of being able to do it for booking, beauty product, and a couple other opportunities, because we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity for future growth. But that ended up causing issues for me because I ended up having to trademark 3 different names. So Beauty Link with a Y is ours. The Link Up, which is our male brand, we also had to trademark. And Beauty Bites is another one that we trademarked, interesting enough. But doing those brand names, getting all of our logos in place, and now we're in the process of protecting our tech, right? Because our tech is pretty proprietary to how we actually complete our process. It's been really interesting to at least go through the legal process and get it tested, reviewed, and probed, and like, wait. Do you guys own this? Yes, we built it custom. Okay, all right. Like, you know, to go through that on a regular basis has been really interesting. But I do 100% tell, like I will say to anybody, make sure that you're protecting your stuff from the moment you can get started. Don't wait till a little bit too late, because someone can come at you and tell you that they can sue you for using a certain name, or even a brand of how you do your logo, which is the reason why BeautyLink's logo ended up changing within year one. Very interesting story there. I'm not going to go in there. But your lawyers are going to end up being your best friend after you trademark, though. But I hope I answered your question in that time. But
Yeah, I'll just answer quickly. So one of the first things that I did even before we started building, when we were designing, was to get a legal team together. IP is complicated for tech because also it requires you to release a certain amount of code as well. And so it's a really interesting kind of balance to figure out what that is and to see who else has done it. I can talk about it more offline if anybody wants to, but know that like I have more lawyers than anything else.
agreed.
Yeah, who doesn't? Same with us. We trademarked across the world because we manufacture our pieces all over. But we manufacture here in, or actually fill our products here in the US, but some of our components come from China. So very early, we had to make sure that Minted was covered across the globe in terms of thinking of fraud and other people using our products and things like that under our name. We also have to be cognizant for us, in terms of ingredients, like there's a lot within beauty, obviously, that we have to be cognizant of in different countries and different spaces and how we represent ourselves. Even though I will say with most beauty, IP is limited to branding. Not really the product. So not the product name, not really the ingredient stack, because we could have the same ingredients in our lipstick and literally call it the exact same name and there is no legal issue around that, which is great for beauty because then people can be so creative. Really the only IP that exists in beauty, or the most trademark product type, is mascara. It requires the most technology. So if you think about the commercials you hear where they say, oh, the brush does blah, 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 and the product lengthens and it strengthens and it expands and it does all these things, that's where all the technology actually exists in terms of physical beauty products. The rest of them, I mean, you can make your lipstick however you want, but at the end of the day, a lot of the ingredients are the same, so there's nothing to be that techie and thoughtful around. But there are other, just to the point of growth, other ideas and structures that we created IP around so that we had the potential in the future to do a lot more things. And so the other thing too is when it comes to investing, it's one of the first questions an investor is going to ask in the due diligence process. List here all of your IP, and you better have that together, or they're going to require you to before they invest, because obviously they don't want to put money into something that L'Oreal could sue you for tomorrow. So.
This is more, hi, very happy to be here. Carmen Diaz-Tocino from the Rhode Island Foundation, but I'm going to speak from another hat. I used to work, thank you. I used to work for the Center for Women and Enterprise, where we were always helping women start and grow businesses. I just want to, this is going to be a two-part comment. One, say thank you for mentioning how important it is to know your numbers, which is one of the major issues we have with women and women of color. We don't want to even talk about numbers. We just talk about our passion and whatever it is.
I know, and I got super like intense about that, so I'm sorry. I didn't mean like be nasty. I feel like then all of a sudden his hands started
You
going.
need to. Yeah. You need to know your numbers, because that's one of the major, I will say that one of the number one reasons why women, especially women of color, we don't actually grow our business. We start a business and it stays this small. The other question that's coming up, the question I really want to ask is, for those, all of you have an education, you have, you went to school of business and things like that. For me, the important is, what about that one that doesn't, what would you say to that woman that does not have an education? How can we help them or even advise them when they have an idea where to go or what to do?
I know I don't have a business degree. I don't have a master's of anything. Kind of like horrible to say, right? But
You're an entrepreneur because this is your second business.
This is my second business, yes, and on the way to start my third, actually. So it's really interesting. But I learned everything I know about business from my grandmother who couldn't read and write. And she had that space of she was gonna do it, and she had to do it, right? And to know that, you know, I had no excuses. I had no excuses at all. And that's the main reason why, instead of looking for a developer first, I decided that I was gonna build it first, right? Because you just need to do it. You're not gonna know if you can do it until you do it, right? And so for the person that doesn't have an education and thinks that that's going to stop them from being able to move someplace, I'm gonna say that it's not the education that's gonna stop you, it's the willingness to do what you think you're driven to do, right? If you think this is what you're here for and that you need to do it and no one else is gonna do it better than you, do it. I mean, that's just in my perspective, but you know, do it.
Can I just jump on this one too? I would say to the woman without education, because I'm actually like really passionate about this. I mean, partly because, right, I'm not trying to fix education, because I mean, I'm just, you know, I sit at home by myself, you know, I'm just one person, but I would say that isn't, I'm about to get really emotional, so just bear with me on this. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters for entrepreneurship, and if you do, it's kind of an unquenchable curiosity and an understanding of a problem as deeply as you can, and a connection to that problem that you're willing to commit your life's work to. And if you can dig deep in that problem and stay committed to it, you can find the solution. If you read the stuff like Lean Startup, there's lots of case studies around that. But at the end of the day, for most startups, at least in tech, we don't even start with the tech. We start with like the fake up, right? You make like you go on Wix or Squarespace and you make the website and you send it out, you know, and you make sure that the solution that you're building is in line with the problem that you have, right? And for the majority, and that's where it starts. And for the majority of us as women of colors, there might not be VC for us anyway. So you're gonna have to do it yourself. And you can just look for activist entrepreneurs or for other women. You can look online all the time about women who, you know, are doing it right now while they're in college or while they're in high school, or who are doing it this way and figuring it out. Because also this narrative about what entrepreneurship looks like, that narrative is what it looks like for white cishet men, but it isn't necessarily our reality in this moment. So even though we have the education, we're still doing it ourselves. Just be curious, understand your problem, be more committed to your problem than you are to the solution, and know that up until this moment, so many of us have come here and done it ourselves anyway. We're all entrepreneurs of our families, of our lives. You know, you've gotten through rough stuff. You know, you're already the CEO of your everyday. Just apply those principles.
What I would say is, and yes, I have a business background, but I think I can think a little broader than myself. So I understand that I'm being othered on this question, it's fine. Because I think the reality is, are the statistics, which is the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in this country are Black women. So it's not that we don't have the passion, it's not that we don't have all of the resources. I think there's just a lot of planning and organization that needs to be done, and pieces that people don't even think about, right? And so then it's like, what are the resources you can tap into to help you put those pieces together? So I'll be a little more tactical in my answer than maybe what we've heard so far. The first thing I'll say is find other entrepreneurs to help you solve your problem. So our very first warehouse, we used to fulfill out of my apartment when we first started. In fact, we worked from my apartment for the first year of the company, right? So it's not like just because I went to business school or we raised money, we had some fabulous place we first started in. Everybody struggles, and it's about accepting and understanding that. So when we had too many orders and we couldn't fulfill out of my apartment anymore, we called around to all the other 3PLs. So these are the big companies that kind of pick, pack, and ship all of your stuff, house your inventory, and ship stuff out. They wanted companies that could fulfill, had like 10,000 orders a day coming in. Well, we weren't quite there yet either. So we knew what we needed, but there wasn't a true solution to our problem. So we started asking around, and in New Jersey, there's this Hispanic woman who had always worked at a 3PL. So she'd always worked in a warehouse doing pick, pack, and ship. And her brother got together and decided that they would start a 3PL and trucking company. So they rented this warehouse space in New Jersey on faith, and she was calling around asking young startups if they needed help. If they gotten to the point where they couldn't fulfill out of their apartment, their house, you insert some small space, but they weren't quite large enough for the big companies. She came to my apartment, she saw how we put it together on a fold-out table in my living room and was like, I can do it better, I can do it cheaper. I don't have all the technology of these large companies, but I promise you I'll grow with you. And we were like, bet, right? And like that day, signed up, and by sign up, I mean we didn't even have contracts in the beginning, right? We took a chance on her, and she absolutely took a chance on us. And over the last 2 years, we have grown the relationship. We've helped her put technology into business as our own business needs grow. Now she has like 5 times the team she started with, and has been able to use this relationship to get other relationships. So all that to say, we might not have it all. We might not have all the funding or all the education or all the whatever, but we do have the relationships. And there are other women who look like us trying to start real things, and we need to, more than anything, coalesce together to help each other get to the next point. I think, so that's one. The other thing is there are public spaces to help us find the resources that we need. So one of the things we did early in our business, as we were talking to retailers actually, who gave us this advice, was to get small women and minority certified. And so it's a pretty easy process. We did it through the state of New York. You have to submit all your information, like make photocopies of your passport kind of thing. You submit and you get certified. And from that have come so many opportunities, because there are corporations, there are government contracts, there are a lot of things that come with saying your business is women and minority certified. And so again, even if these are free resources you can find online and maybe you don't know about them, but empower other women of color and just women in general to do it, because there's a lot of free resources that come with getting that certification. So education or not, I think it's about really talking to each other and figuring out what other people are doing and how we can help each other, because no one person's gonna fix the problem.
Can I add on to that? And accelerators also are really awesome.
Depends.
Well, if you need a baseline to learn the language and feel more comfortable, it's a time suck, I know. Because
Well, I was thinking of the equity suck.
Not all of them do that.
No, I
though.
know, but a lot of people get into those because they're kind of predatory, especially for women and minorities.
So CWE, Center of Women and Entrepreneurship, and Enterprise, is a great opportunity for individuals who would like to get the help, learn the language, and not give up equity.
Yes, that
There-
kind.
there we go.
Do that kind.
So I just wanted to add to Reka's point. My grandmother, she died in 2014, but she was an entrepreneur in Haiti. She never learned how to read or write, and she sent all her children to school because she saw that there was a need. She had a skill. She was an exceptional seamstress. And she decided that she was going to sew for people, and she sewed uniforms for kids, and that's how she was able to buy her house. and to send all her children to school to get a basic education. I think what we need also are resources to help cultivate those natural skills that people have. I think there are a lot of times where people want to start their own businesses, but there aren't enough resources to help them cultivate it. And I also think there needs to be more resources provided through our municipalities and through our state government. Because there isn't, there are a lot of times, particularly for women of color, they don't have those networks. They don't have like a friend who is super rich and who could like drop like $1 million, or even 200,000. But if there were more opportunities in terms of like tax incentives or grants, like startup grants, and I know our city has some opportunities here, but I don't necessarily think it's enough. But I think just to get people started, resources to get folks started, I think it's really important. And even like filling out an application to get certified, for many people that could be a challenge because there are language barriers and it requires time. So I think if those resources or those things were housed in a certain space or like CWE, and there was more funding that was coming from our local government to support those initiatives, I think that's also a way to support women entrepreneurs.
I wanted to say this about tactical stuff, and then, because I think that you raised a good point about tactical stuff. I think from a tactical standpoint, as opposed, I think you have to figure out kind of what is the equation that will get you to the success that you want. And depending on where you want to build, you might not need quote unquote validity that comes with a certain degree. But if that is, there are definitely adjacent ways to get it, or to just build your team out with someone who has that validity. I think a lot of the narrative around entrepreneurship is that there's this one person, there's two people who can cover all these skills. But the truth is that every entrepreneur, even solo entrepreneurs, end up building a team. And so if you exist in your strengths and you build out the rest of your team where you have your deficits, then even if you personally don't have the validity, there might be a way through networks and organizations that someone, even on your board of advisors or mentorship, who has that validity, who will vouch for you in that capacity. So if the question is about validity and kind of, as far as like having these stamps that people, make you deem worthy or whatever the narrative is, but there's an equation for all of that and figure out what it is. But definitely a lot of the narrative around entrepreneurship is like, it's like Athena. I was born out of Zeus's head and I built it all by myself. But that isn't how it works. If you're not good at finances, then partner with a financial education organization or go to those workshops, and whoever leads it, ask them to connect you with their network and their network and their network. Because then you don't have to also build that network yourself. You have to build a network with one person who will tap you into that network that has all the validity you want.
So unfortunately we have time for one question, but I actually, I know that you have had your question up, but I saw your hands up like way early and I totally missed it. So, and then, yes, and then,
Purple.
scarf? Yeah, so, sorry, I missed your hand bit earlier and so I just want to make sure that we get to
The
your
good news
question.
is that my questions have been answered. I had tons of questions.
Okay.
But, they've been answered from time to time, but the one that remains is about self-care. I started a business a year ago and I'm extremely passionate about it. And I would work on it 24 hours a day. If I have to go to the bathroom, I'm upset because I'm like really into this thing. It just excites me. I wanted to continue the conversation that Nerva mentioned about self-care. You mentioned about running. And if each of you can speak on that, how do you maintain that self-care? Because from that's where the creativity comes and the energy, especially when you're rejected, if you and have to overcome some obstacles. I'd be curious to learn that.
Yeah, I can start. So I love running. I love working out, and I put it on my calendar so the team knows I'm going to leave to go do that thing. And I'm always excited to share the latest thing that I went and tried, like this boxing class called Rumble. It's a lot of theatrics. I wouldn't do it again, but I tried it and I loved it, and it was a nice release. My co-founder and I, we also have an executive coach. So we both meet with her separately and then together every month. So not only does that allow us to work on our co-founder issues that will arise as the business continues to grow, but also work on our own management styles and how we want to grow as leaders. And so that gets a lot of thoughts out of your head and allows for a specific time and place to think about certain things. Otherwise, like, I'm in the details and with people and strategy all day. So for me, an unplug is to, and I know this isn't for most people, but is to actually go online, like go on Twitter and go on Instagram and just get lost. It's funny how much you can be inspired by random things. A post here can make me think, oh, we should do an email like this or an event like this or whatever. So just to stay curious in the world and see what else is going on.
So Abby knows this because she tried to reach me and I was unreachable for like over a week. Is I have a Buddhism practice and I go on retreat a lot. Not a lot, but enough to make people concerned. I have a Vipassana project and I also go on silent retreat, and I don't answer emails on Mondays either. I really try to create conscious consumption because it keeps me sane. I'm also working in a very dark field, and so it's really, really important for that. I'm part of a People of Color Sangha, so if anybody's interested in that, there's actually a retreat coming up in Baltimore, December 14th. I'm not here to plug my monastery, that sounds weird, but yeah, but that's what I have. I think the other thing is that there's this organization called Cave Day, but there's a lot of science about self-care and unplugging and kind of doing the exact opposite of what you do. So if a solo founder, sometimes working alone, then my unplug is the exact opposite, which is to be with people and to really kind of have a construct around that. So that way it isn't just that I have time for me, but that I'm replenishing that other part of myself and doing kind of that balance act.
I twerk a lot.
Yes.
Because music is definitely part of my management style. Sometimes I just gig to the music that I'm sent, and it helps me out. And then the third thing, I guess, to be like is to learn how to be present with my family. I'm learning how to be present with my family, right? Yeah, that sounds disgruntled, doesn't it? I had to learn, my nephew is 10. And my nephew drew something of me recently where he was like, blah, blah, beauty link, blah, blah, meeting. And, did that hit me so hard. It hit me hard enough to know that I wasn't present and that he was 10 years old and all he wanted to do was watch a movie. And so now I'm learning how to be more present. And turning off my phone when I'm with my family, and also letting my family know you can text me, but you can't call me, in form of just being like present, right? If it's an emergency, text me. If you need me, text me. Don't call me. You call me, I'm thinking someone's dead. Like, just don't do that. And I have a therapist, and I do have a business coach as well. The therapist helps me scream, yell, mull, and my business coach tells me to shut up. So I just I enjoy the balance that I've been able to develop for myself, but I definitely have learned that being a solo founder, I can lose myself. And because I didn't want to lose myself, I needed to put some of these hacks together, meaning like business coach was important. The therapist was just like there because sometimes I gave myself burnout. Right? And burnout is real. So those are just my personal like self-care hacks.
For me, I wear a lot of hats. So you're my position at Brown, and then City Council, then my children, my siblings call my children, my daughter and my son, Devo and Diva. They're dramatic. I love them, but But, and they're great. They're smart. That's the other thing. They're like very direct, very smart. They know what they want, especially my daughter. But what I started doing is, there's my personal self-care, but I also realized too that I need to be present for my family because my daughter would like write me notes. And they're kind of funny though. But she'll write something like she'll draw a picture or she'll write like a letter telling me that I was mean or something like that. And it might be because of something really minor, because she didn't follow directions and I punished her. But I also realized that I'm taking time away from them. So when you're in this position, you're not only making like personal sacrifices, but your family is also making a significant sacrifice to allow you to do this. And so my daughter goes to a lot of meetings with me. I mean, she canvassed with me. My son, he's 16. He does not want to even be bothered. I had to threaten him a couple of times to like help me with stuff. But one of the things I started doing every Wednesday mornings, he starts school a little later. Every Wednesday, he and I just have breakfast together. And it might be going to a coffee shop, getting like a croissant and a bagel, but that's our time and that's uninterrupted. And sometimes it is interrupted because we might run into people and I have to say, oh, I have to stop. I have to tend to my son. But that's our time. And it makes me so happy. It's so fulfilling for me. And with my daughter, I'll also allocate some time with her. She's high maintenance. She's so high maintenance. So like she wants to do specific things like, Mom, we need to get our nails done. Let's go get our nails done. And I'm not like my siblings, like both of my siblings, when they walk out, you would think that they were like, they could be on the cover of Vogue magazine. And I'm more like the tomboy kind of person. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna use the word tomboy. I'm just like, that's just not me. I put things on. Yes, I like them to look good, but I put things on. But then my daughter is the person who will say, you're not going out like that. One day she said, you need that thing under your eye, to cover the black stuff. And I was like, or like, she's like, Mom, I love you, I'm just looking out. And she's 8. She's, people who know her, she's wonderful. She tells me how to put blush on. She's amazing. She picks out my lipstick. She's wonderful. But that brings me so much joy to like just spend that time with them. I do work out and I run. Last year I ran 3 marathons. This year I ran 0, but I was doing this high intensity workout and I was supposed to max on my like deadlifts. So I got to 180 and then I had to like hurt my leg. And so no squatting, no lifting, no running, none of that. Yeah. And so I didn't meet my 225 max, but I was close. So I'm trying to figure out how to fill that space. And I can go to yoga or, bike. It's kind of cold, but, I could go on the machine. But there's something really just serene and wonderful running outside. And I run when it's 20 degrees, 10 degrees outdoors. It just feels so good just to be outside and run. And there has been times where I'll go for a run and I forget where I'm at. And it allows me to clear my mind. I think about things. Some of my best ideas come from running. And then by, the time I'm done, I'm like, oh yeah, I ran like 6-7 miles. And so it's healthy physically, but it's also very healthy mentally for me. So I'm trying to figure out what to fill in until my feet get better. And so swimming might be the thing. I do have a therapist that I see. Although she wants to be more consistent, I told her, listen, I don't have that type of time, but I will call you when I need you. So she knows we're on a need call basis kind of thing. But I see her sometimes at like the 7 Star, like a little cafe and other places throughout the city, and she lives in the neighborhood. And the wonderful thing about her is that she's a woman of color. So I specifically found someone that I can relate to and that could understand me as a person and understand my needs. I have wonderful friends. When I moved back to Providence, so I came back 4 years ago. I lived in Miami, I lived in Philadelphia for about 14 years. And one of the things that I thought that I was gonna lose was my family in Philly. And I've just have like a group of wonderful friends, and Melissa's part of this friends group that I have. And we have like the sister friends group. But we also, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed, I've told you. But we'll get together like on a random Thursday night or Friday night. I'll text and say, let's get a drink. And the three of us will grab a drink or 4 or 5 and just talk. Like everything we wanted to say to someone that we know that we couldn't say because we needed to be tactful, we'll say. And we unleash, and it's just wonderful to be able to talk to women, other women who are doing some amazing work, who are in the community, who's trying to figure out how to balance things, and just to kind of unleash, and for us to listen to one another. And I'm finally gonna take a 4-day break at the end of the month. I haven't been on vacation in 2 years. My kids have gone on vacation. I have not gone on vacation. And I look forward to that. So that's the other thing. Yeah, so taking a step back and relaxing.
So my name is Roberta Powell, and I'm an entrepreneur, late life, third career type entrepreneur. And I just wanted to, when I think about, I looked up your websites really quick, and how would I know, and again, how would I know that you exist outside of coming here? Is there a website that provides, information about entrepreneurs or new startups for Black women, that like an Black woman Amazon website, or how would I know that? How can I purchase your makeup, or how do I do that?
I'm gonna become an entrepreneur and start that.
Because that's I'm thinking that this is wonderful, but had I not come here, and I have people that I can, and that's how it grows. But we need, like some type of a Black woman, something rather, where we can find how to engage and purchase, and because I'll purchase your lipstick. I'd rather give you the money than give it to whoever I'm going to Macy's or whatever buying. Yeah, but I don't know that, and so I just think that that's really important. And just my final comment is just from my best exposure, and you don't know about me, and I just found out about you, but I went to an MIT hackathon. It's a fluke. I just happened to see it online. I said, hey, I'm gonna, and I went and I proposed my problem, and I got a group, and I got so many connections to the point that the end of this month, I'm going to be going to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, because they heard my story. And they want me to go to the MIT hackathon in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. How did that happen? It happened because, and so I encourage you to go to all the hackathons. I didn't even know what a hackathon was, but now I do. And so I go to all of them, but I really, really encourage people to, Brown has one, and so on and so forth, and you meet people and things happen. So, but we really need to figure out how to connect, because I'd certainly rather support a community of entrepreneurs and share that. Sorry.
I'll just be really quick in terms of the Amazon for Black women products. There are a ton of different resources you can follow on Instagram or Facebook that every day highlight a different Black startup, whether it's tech or physical products. So there are resources out there. I think part of it is just we're maybe the last 5 years really starting a wave of like Black owned, Black people buy it kind of thing. And so there are a lot of startups that are starting to address this very issue. I would say for Minted specifically, we're in our 2nd year, and so for beauty enthusiasts, they know who we are, right? People who are actually searching for us. But obviously brand awareness is an issue for every startup. And so to become a household name, the secret is in 10 years, right? Like you don't know that anything exists. And then one day you're like, oh, I've always known this thing. No, you haven't. It's been probably a 5 to 10 year process before you actually knew what that thing is. So I think it's part of the founder's job, like just as much it is to make sure that my business is thriving and worth millions of dollars as it is to come to panels and talk and, consistently provide the brand message and say what we're about. And I think that's just part of startup life, which you'll realize, like going to Riyadh will be amazing, but that will be one of many, many trips you have to take on the road to really creating brand awareness. So I don't think it's any one thing that's going to solve the problem. And for a founder perspective, it really is just a part of the job.
I agree that it's part of the job. I wish there was some type of Amazon or something or other, but we do hear about each other here and there. Like, I've definitely heard about
I've
you.
heard of Beauty Link, yeah.
Yeah. So like, it happens. And I think that with more and more time, we're all going to be able to create that connectivity, and it's going to be organic and catch on. But for right now, I don't think that we're just essentially going to have something at the snap of the finger. But Instagram is a great place to start looking and finding people.
Just go on Instagram and look for
There are
Black women
hashtags
business-
too.
Black-
I forgot
Yeah,
which, like
there are
there's
hashtags, influencers to follow. I think part of it is like, what are you interested in?
Yeah.
And you'll naturally find the things that
You're
are
looking
interested.
for.
Yeah, it's kind of it, probably.
A big round of applause for our amazing panelist and moderator.